Meetup IDJN pada sore ini. Kali ini kita kedatangan seorang tamu yang luar biasa, ada David Gebu. Beliau adalah pendiri dan sekaligus Direktur Manajer dari The Tree Map, sebuah organisasi yang memang fokus pada mapping ya. David dan teman-temannya itu mendevelop yang namanya Atlas Nusantara. Itu sebuah alat untuk mendeteksi deforestasi di Indonesia. Nah, ini menurutku sebuah tools yang menarik untuk kita pelajari bareng-bareng. Sore ini sudah ada David. Sebelum kita ke David, nanti mungkin David mungkin akan memperkenalkan diri lebih dulu. Setelah itu mungkin kita akan langsung bertanya kepada David, sebenarnya apa sih Atlas Nusantara ini dan mengapa ini penting dan bagaimana menggunakan tools ini. Saya sendiri sudah mencoba toolsnya, tapi memang masih masih kesulitan untuk memahami bagaimana penggunaan toolsnya. Tapi sejauh ini yang bisa saya tangkap adalah tools ini adalah tools yang menarik untuk dipelajari, terutama untuk teman-teman jurnalis. Ada banyak data di sana, ada banyak insight, informasi terkait dengan deforestasi dan juga banyak hal lainnya ya terkait hutan gitu. David masih mencoba terhubung di sekarang, oke. David, do you hear me? Hello, David.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. David, maybe we can start with introduction first. You can introduce yourself first and your background and what the tree map and what is about the Atlas Nusantara.
Yes, I can do this. Sorry, 1 second. I need to open up something. Maybe you will do some cuts in the video, I guess. No?
Not yet.
Hello.
Okay, you can share it.
Sorry, shall I start?
Okay, please.
So my name is David Gavo. I am a remote sensing specialist. I use satellite imagery to measure changes on the land surface of the Earth. I'm also an environmental scientist. I'm really interested in the intersection of spatial and temporal data, the environment, the climate, economics, and policy. And I specialize in the use of satellites, cloud computing, field investigations, and government data to somehow expose the human footprints on Earth's land surfaces. So I examine things like impacts of fires, agricultural expansion, infrastructure developments on tropical forests, and links with corporate actions.
So I find something interesting about the tools that you developed with the team Nusantara Atlas. What exactly is Nusantara Atlas is, and what the idea behind the Nusantara Atlas?
The idea is to really empower civil society. In fact, anyone with the tools to detect deforestation and fires in real time and ensure what happens on the ground is fair, transparent, and democratic. So this is really for anyone interested in monitoring deforestation, fires, peatland degradation, but also forest regeneration in equatorial Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and we're hoping to expand to PNG and other countries.
Okay. And where the data come from?
Well, it depends on the kinds of data. So we have, I guess we have like 3 different kinds of data. So the platform brings satellite imagery. That's one kind of data from like, I don't know whether you've heard of the company Planet, Sentinel 2, that's a satellite from the European Space Agency, from Landsat, which is a satellite from NASA, another from NOAA, SNPP, Aqua, and Terra. All these are satellites from NASA. So that's the first sort of set of data sets that we're bringing. We're bringing satellite imagery from different space agencies, primarily from the European Space Agency, from NASA, the American Space Agency, and from a company called Planet. The second type of data set that we're bringing is processed information. So data that is processed based on the satellite imagery. So we're, for example, bringing near real-time deforestation data. Sometimes we call them deforestation alerts. They're essentially data that are coming in every week into the system. There's 2 types. One is a radar-based alert system, which is called a RAD, R-A-D-D, which was developed by the University of Wageningen, a group of scientists there who developed these alert systems, and they published this in scientific journals. There's another deforestation alert that is called GLAD, which is an optical, which is based on optical satellite data, not radar, and which was developed by the University of Maryland. We're also bringing in 5 hotspots from the VIRS satellites and the MODIS satellites. So both of these are actually from NASA. And we're also bringing in other data that we produced ourselves. So particularly the expansion of oil palm and pulp and paper plantations. This is work that we published in a scientific journal in March in PLOS One. And the last kind of data set that we're bringing is a rich cadastral information, primarily from Indonesia. So we're bringing in data such as like municipalities, you know, like village boundaries. Indonesia has about something like a bit less than 84,000 municipalities. So this is data from BG. We're also bringing in the data from the kecamatan's, from the kabupaten's, provinces, and we're also bringing in concession data, you know, the area of land allocated to plantation companies of both oil palm and pulp and paper by the government to develop large industrial scale oil palm or acacia, sometimes eucalyptus plantations. So we're also bringing in these data. Some of the data it's from the Ministry of Forestry and Environment itself. They have a website in which they publish these cadastral information. So we could obtain that from the website. In other instances, like for the concession data for oil palm, where the Ministry of Forestry and Environment does not really have the jurisdiction because they are outside of the Kawasan Hutan, and for which there is no single sort of centralized concession data set. So for this, we work with to create the concession data for oil palm, which is by no means perfect. We work with NGO friends in Indonesia who have been doing this, who have gone to the field, who have looked at, you know, like company profiles, who bought company profiles, and who sort of combed the internet to sort of create like a concession data set. So we work, for example, with Greenpeace Indonesia, who were sort of taking the lead on generating the concession data set for oil palm. We work with Auriga, another NGO based in Jakarta, and a bunch of others as well.
Okay. As a journalist, I think I have a question. What can this tool do? With that much data, and how can this tool help journalists like me who working for issue in environmental?
So what the platform does is that it empowers anyone to know what's happening right now in terms of deforestation in across Indonesia, and who might be responsible. If, for example, there's deforestation going on inside an oil palm concession, and we know who owns that concession, then you can quickly identify, how much area was cleared, and who's responsible. So if you're doing work on a specific company, for example, you can look at you can use the platform to access informed information on deforestation in the concessions. But you can also so that's very good for like verifying no deforestation pledges, for example. A number of companies have made no deforestation pledges, and so but they need to be verified, and so that can be done with the atlas. You can also look at the performance of protected areas, because the system also has a protected area layer, which is the layer from the Ministry of Forestry and Environment. So you can see which protected area has had the most or the least amount of deforestation, like recently, say like a month, 6 months ago, a year ago. Or you can also look at longer term trends, like looking at the last 10 years, the last 20 years, and it's all annualized, so you can see how the trends have sort of evolved in time. And you can also look at the same sort of trends by village. You can work out which village has had the most deforestation, for example, of the last 20 years, or which kecamatan had the most deforestation in the last 20 years, or which kecamatan had the least deforestation. You can also look at what's going on in like restoration projects, or like indigenous territories, and so on. So really, what this does is that it really sort of helps you identify what's really going on the ground. Even though this is really using satellite imagery, it's very useful, because there's one really interesting feature that you might be interested in, for example, is that the system, it can generate time-lapse satellite animations on the fly anywhere in Indonesia. In fact, not just in Indonesia, but pretty much anywhere in the world. We're still sort of trialing it, but what that means is that you could say, okay, you can generate little animations, of like changing
Layers or
changing land uses, and then you can save that as a little animated GIF file, which is about 2 megabytes, very, very light, and you can send that to friends, or you can even embed this in a news story, for example.
Okay. So the next question, I think, how to use Atlas, Nusantara Atlas. Maybe you can explain it, and you can share your screen and demonstrate how to use it.
Yes. So how do I share the screen?
Wait, I think
share screen. Yes.
Share screen. Yes.
Can you see it?
Yes, okay, it's already there.
Right. Okay, so Nusantara Atlas has two sections. It's got the atlas itself, but it also has like a blog section, like a news sections where we can so you see got maps and stories. So if you go to stories, for example, it will showcase a number of stories that we've written or that we've sort of expanded on. So sometimes when we find an interesting article that is published by a journalist, but we think that there might be something missing, or we think that maybe we could enrich the story with some nice time-lapse animations, for example, we sort of rewrite the story. So we've started writing a few stories. This just got the blog section was just released in March, so we only have a few stories, but that's what it does. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is we're really trying to generate evidence-based stories linking deforestation or fire alerts, time-lapse animations, and maybe field investigations, you know, and to sort of georeference those stories. So that's one aspect of the atlas. But the perhaps most important and technical aspect is the atlas itself, which you access by going into maps here. And what this does is that it's going to open the atlas, and it will have the main sort of page will essentially ask you, what is it, what do you want to do? It's sort of to help people to sort of navigate through the system. So the way we've sort of laid this out, we have like 4 different modules. One is called like use the global search, use the dashboard, analyze land cover changes, generate time lapse. So I'll start with this one, use the global search. If I go to here, it's taking me to this search right here, this search box. And in here, what I'm basically, I can search anything that we have in the database. What I mean by anything is like any area, any location in Indonesia that we have in our database. So it could be the name of a company, like a group, you know, it could be the name of a subsidiary or a concession. Often it's a PT. It could be the name of a mill. It could be an administrative unit. You could be searching, say you want to search the whole of Indonesia. So if I type here, you type the first 3 letters, and here you search for the whole of Indonesia, for example. And so I'm clicking it, it's going to highlight the whole of Indonesia. But you could also be searching a province, you could be searching a kabupaten, kecamatan, down to the village level. So, you know, if you were born in a village, maybe, you know, chances are that you'll find it on our system, and you could look at, you know, what's been happening in terms of forest cover change or land cover change in your village of where you were born, for example. So now what it's doing, it's searching for Indonesia. Maybe it's a little bit slow because the internet here is a little bit slow. So I hope it's not going to be too long.
Okay.
So what this global search does is that it enables you to, if you've read imagine you've read a story, or imagine you have a story in mind with a specific location. Often what that means is that it entails talking about administrative unit. You might be interested in a village, or, you know, and then so you can enter that in this search here, which is the global search. So here we now have Indonesia highlighted, the area which is in the yellow lines. And we now have a set of new icons that have appeared right here. let's not worry about these ones for now. Yeah.
Mm.
So you have a local search. Let's maybe not worry about that for now. Here, if you go to layers, you will actually see the legends for the colors that you actually see here on the map.
Okay.
So for example, if you go further down, you see that plantations in 2021, for example, we have 3 different kinds of plantations. We have smallholder oil palm in yellow, like there's a little bit down here. We have industrial oil palm in sort of khaki, and here we have a different kind of plantation, which is industrial pulpwood plantations, which could be eucalyptus, acacia. So for example, you have, we know that pulp and paper plantations were much more developed in Sumatra and Riau, for example. So if we go around this area, for example, you see that a lot of that here is acacia or eucalyptus. And then further down, you have different kinds of colors for forest. We report 3 different kinds of forest. We report forest on mineral soils, which will be this this color down here.
Okay.
Maybe what I should do is maybe increase the brightness. Is that better?
Yes.
So here you see this is a block of forest. I think this is Bukit 30 National Park, if I'm not mistaken, in Sumatra. And it's got this green here, it's forest on mineral soils. Then it's surrounded by smallholder oil palm here. And it's also got some industrial oil palm here, you see. And right here in the darker shades here is pulp and paper plantations. And here on this side, you have a different kind of green. It's kind of a green blue. This is peat swamp forest, and here, in fact, you can see you have Burbak National Park down here. We have a bit of forest here, mostly peatland forest. Yeah, peat swamp forest. And further down here, you have another kind of forest, which is mangrove forest. In fact, this is Sembilan National Park down here. We've also got data on transmigration sites, but this is not across the entire country. We and you see here it's only for Papua, so we have a little bit more data on Papua, and then we have a water mask, and we have a number of roads as well, and we've also highlighted the trans roads like Trans Sumatra, Kalimantan, Trans Papua, and we have cities and villages. And here this is obviously the country boundary, and you can add more layers here. If you go to add layer, you can have all these data that you can add. So you can add oil palm concessions, pulpwood concession, logging, mining concessions, other kinds of concessions, the palm oil mills, protected areas, conservation landscapes. This is primarily Loisa ecosystem. Ecosystem restoration, like ecosystem restorasi, like for example, there's there's one in Kalimantan, Rimbaraya, for example, or Harapan in Sumatra, Burung Indonesia. Customary territories, village forest, community forest, all of these are actually from KLHK. The sort of the hutan desa, yeah. In fact, I forgot to say that you can put everything in Bahasa, yeah. So you see, you can switch to Bahasa. Maybe it's better if I switch to Bahasa here. So again, you see tambah layer. So ini hutan adat, wilayah adat, hutan desa, hutan kemasyarakatan. And then ada juga kawasan hutan. So you can add a lot of different sort of layers by going to layers and going to tambah layer here. But by default, we have these layers always. Okay. So here what I did in the global search, I searched for the whole of Indonesia. And so here, if I go down to layer, if I go to satellite, this is all the citra satelit yang saya bisa buka but maybe we can go back to this later. But here is peringatan. So here di bawahnya, basically here we have the forest and fire alerts across Indonesia. So for the forest alerts, we have two kinds of sensors, GLAD and RAD, as I explained at the start. So here, by default, we have GLAD. And by default, we say, show me all the deforestation from GLAD that started from the 1st of January 2022 to sekarang, which is now is 11 July 2022. Yeah, we are a little bit behind by a week. Yeah. And what this tells us here is that with this data is that there was 232,000 hectares of tree loss since the 1st of January 2022, according to this type of alert, GLAD. But if I go to RAD, it might give a slightly different number, you know, because it measures things differently. With RAD, for the same time period, it talks about 170,000 and a bit. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, if I go back to GLAD, for example, not all of this tree loss means forest loss. So if you want to look at the details, you go to Detil here, and here it's basically telling us how much of this tree loss can be forest loss. So here we have the three categories of forest that we report, hutan tanah mineral. So there were about 51,000 hectares. I'm rounding it, yeah. And hutan bakau, this much, and hutan rawa gambut, this much. And you see, most of the tree loss was actually loss of trees in non-forest. Here, I'm not talking about the kawasan hutan. I'm talking about the
Forest.
The forest as in a biological sense. Yeah. And there's more detail here. So, for example, you see here there were about 36,000 hectares of tree loss inside the plantation of kelapa sawit. It could be because the plantation was too old and the company wanted to clear the forest. That happened a lot. And also for kayu pulp, 36,000 hectares. This could be because the trees were harvested. Yeah, this panen. Yeah. So you have all that information here. And this graphic here gives you a profile of when tree loss was recorded on a weekly basis since the 1st of January 2022 up until now. And it tells you whether it was forest or non-forest. Yeah. So the sum of all of this is 232,000 hectares. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have a carousel, so you can look at forest loss on mineral soils, mangrove forest loss, peat swamp forest loss. And if you hover over the bars, you have the numbers. So you see here, for example, it says 843 hectares.
Okay.
And
what we have in the can you go to the up scroll to, so this is the total of the loss.
Yes, this is the total tree loss measured by one sensor, GLAD, and another sensor is called RAD, and it gives a smaller number. And so this is the total tree loss according to RAD. So the truth is perhaps somewhere in between. Yeah. You know, measurements are never perfect, and depending on how you measure, you get sometimes a different number. What this platform really does, it gives you an indication of what is going on. But if you really want to know the true number of hectares cleared, you really need to go in the ground, or you need to have access to very, very high resolution imagery, like 1 meter or less, and to do a detailed assessment. Yeah. Then you have also the fire alerts. That's interesting. So if I go to this tab, basically what this tells me is, so you have the fire hotspots, you know, the red points, red squares appearing. So for example, there are a few fires down here, and according to the VIRS satellite, again, there are different kinds of sensors. So we have VIRS and MODIS satellites. So here I'll stick to VIRS. VIRS is better because it's more high resolution than MODIS. But sometimes people like to use MODIS, so we put both. So this was yang hari ini. So it means there were 225 hotspots recording today by the VIRS satellite across Indonesia. And you can look at what happened in like the last 24 hours, or you can look at what happened the last 7 days. And again, so you have more hotspots in the last 7 days. Of course, we are entering the dry season now. And you have a profile of the last 7 days, the number of hotspots recording in a daily basis. You see on the 19th, the 20th, the 21st. And also, again, it tells you which hotspots were in forest and which hotspots were outside forest. So you can see here that from 2,411 hotspots, there were only 130 in what we call hutan tanah mineral and 16 in what we call hutan rawa gambut. Most of the hotspots were actually in non-forest areas. What you can also do with the hotspot data, you can look at the historical data. So here, what it does is that you can go back, but if you take that cursor and you slide across to the left, you can go back by 1 year. So sometimes it takes a little while because it needs to remap the hotspots here. But you see here, I'm doing the hotspots from the 21st of February to the 26th of July. You can go back to 1 year before. So you will be able to go back to the 26th of July, 2021. We could, in theory, we could go back further than that, but there's also trade-offs between the speed of the internet and the costs as well, because everything is in the cloud, and so there are costs. Yeah, so these are the hotspots since the 8th of November, for example, 2021, 29,503, and this is the profile. So you can start seeing peaks. You know, there were like peaks on like around the 28th and 29th of March, and there were also some peaks here, and that's Indonesia wide. Okay, and then you can look at trend. Okay, so I'll go back to satellite later. You can look at trend tahunan.
Yes.
So trend tahunan is quite interesting because it gives you an overview of what's been happening over the last 20 years since 2001 to 2021. So here, this is forest loss annually in hectares from 2001 to 2021. And you can see that deforestation has drastically reduced after 2016. There was a big peak in 2016, which was in fact a lot of that was due to the fires of October 2015, but they were reported in 2016 because sometimes there's cloud cover and you need to wait a few months before the satellite can detect the deforestation. So that peak in 2016 was really caused by the forest fires of September, October 2018 in Kalimantan and Sumatra. But then you can see in 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 a dramatic reduction, and it continued. It went up a little bit in 2019 because there were fires in 2019. And then it will continue to go down in 2020, and in 2021, we report 174,000 hectares. So this is the lowest level in 20 years. It's even lower than 2001. So that's That's good news. That's really good news.
Yeah.
It's important to stress that, and we hope it's going to continue to go down. So this is.
Can I
Sorry.
download data in CSV or Excel? I think
so. These data here, you have the possibility to download it here. So if you click right here, it will it will start to download, and it will open the data in an Excel format, like this, with the organized, so you'll have the angka and all that.
Okay.
Then, so this is kehilangan hutan, all three categories. So this green, and the mangrove combined. And then here we break that down into forest loss on mineral soils, kehilangan hutan tanah mineral, and then kehilangan hutan mangrove, and then kehilangan hutan rawa gambut. So again, we see a dramatic reduction. That's very good news. Then if you continue, you can see ekspansi perkebunan kelapa sawit dan deforestasi. So this is the expansion of industrial oil palm. So here, for example, if there was a peak in 2009, this is how much. The sum of the four numbers here is the total expansion of planted area. And there were about 185,000 hectares that were planted at the expense of forest on mineral soils, 42 hectares by the expense of peat-swamp forest, or almost nothing, but most of that was planted in non-forest areas. And so the green here is basically the forest, and the white here is the non-forest. This is for petani kecil of oil palm. So this is the expansion of oil palm. So the same profile, but for the yellow ones, for the plantations that are yellow. Like down here, it's a bit pixelated. It should, maybe because the internet is a little bit low, is a little bit slow. We're in the countryside here, so. And the next one is ekspansi perkebunan kayu pulp. So it's like, acacia and eucalyptus. So again, you see a big peak in 2004, and then decreased, and then we see a sort of an increase again in after 2017. So we sort of see that the pulp and paper plant industry is expanding again. But the sort of good news is that we sort of see that there's more white than green in the last year, which suggests that there's a decoupling between expansion and deforestation. So it looks like the companies have sort of started to, they've expanded, but they're sort of more careful to try to not expand at the expense of forests. And you can play all of this. So if you click on play here, you can see you can basically visualize how all of this expanded in the landscape. So you see how much green is disappearing, and how much of it is being replaced by the various plantations. And this is something that you can do. This is an interactive time lapse, so you can zoom over the area, for example, and this is somewhere in Riau, and you can do the same thing. So you see that in 2001, and then in 4, and then you got more and more and more, and you see how it follows here the year on the left in the chart. And then what we have here is the ringkasan, so sort of the summary for Indonesia. That's very interesting, perhaps also because it sort of gives summary numbers. So it says that hutan tersisa is about this number, about 87 million hectares and a bit. Again, you want to know how much of that was hutan rawa gambut, for example. So there's about this much left. mangroves, this much left, and so on. This is luas terbakar in 2019. This I'll skip that. This is a paper that we published recently where we showed that there was this much burning, about 3.1 million hectares. They got me into trouble with the Indonesian government a couple of years ago, but that's the number that we report here. But what we're working on now is to basically give annual estimates, not just for 2019. We're working on that now. And then this is kehilangan hutan sejak 2001. So we estimate that about 10 million hectares were cleared. So that's about 12% of the forest area in 2000. About 12% were cleared, 10 million hectares. Again, with the details of how, so like we estimate that more than 3 million hectares of hutan gambut were cleared, for example. And then we have this penebangan dan konversi hutan menjadi perkebunan. So di tahun yang sama, so we have that for two types, kayu pulp and the HTIs and kelapa sawit. And then we have also the luas perkebunan industrial. Well, this is not just industrial. We look at details. For example, we see that we estimate that about 16.6 million hectares of oil palm exists in 2001. Sorry, 2021. About 10.5 million hectares industrial and 6.1 from what we call petani kecil, but sometimes it's a bit of a gray area because sometimes the plantations that are reported as petani kecil is more like orang menengah, like it happens a lot in Riau. And kayu pulp, about 3 million hectares. So there would be about 16.6 million hectares of sawit in Indonesia today, and 3 million hectares of acacia eucalyptus today across Indonesia as well. And this is the expansion since 2001. Voila. So it means that if there's so it means that, for example, if kelapa sawit expanded by 8.7 million hectares in the last 20 years, but today there's 16.6. It means that there were about 8 million hectares that existed before 2001. Yeah, that's the idea. So that's the idea. And so the thing is that this kind of data, you have access from any land unit. So and also you can look at satellite data. So for example, you can look at planet imagery from, like, say, bulan Mei, for example, and pasang di peta. So it will why is it not? Why is it not showing? Oh yeah, there it is. It's taking a bit of time. So this is an image from planet at 5-meter resolution, and it's so from May. So it's very, very recent. But maybe you can look at the one from June. Mungkin belum keluar. There's a time lag. So you can also put it on, like, kanan, for example. So you put that image to the right, and that means that maybe you can you want to maybe compare with like an image from May of last year, and you put it to kiri, for example, and so you then have access to a comparison between an image from May 2001 and an image from May 2022. So for example, here there's and here this is data in natural colors as the eye would see it. So if you were flying with a helicopter above the area, that's more or less how your eye would see it. So this color here is tanah terbuka, is bare land. And then you have different shades of green. This is forest. So you see, we can zoom in. There's quite a very good detail because this is planet imagery, is in 5-meter spatial resolution. and you can see here, for example, that the area was maybe recently cleared in May 2021, and when you look at the area in May 2022, it's already been planted again with acacia. Yeah. But the area next to it was just cleared, and it was last year. It was, so you can see all these changes.
Very interesting.
You can also, so I'm gonna remove those. When you zoom in very closely, when you don't load any image, and you zoom in very closely, by default, a very high resolution image will appear. It's this image it's an ESRI base map. It's imagery up to 50 centimeter resolution. And there you can really see a very high details. Like in Google, you see the trees and so on, the crowns of the trees and the canopy. You see houses and so on. The only problem is that we don't have control over the date. It's a base map that the software company ESRI, makes public. So we don't know whether that image was taken last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It's kind of a mix of, but it's very good to have that because it has the highest level of detail. So sometimes if you want to double check whether the area is really forest, or you can, take that sort of image and do a comparison. And you can also, so this base map appears by default if you zoom in very closely, but you can also put it pasang di peta like this. So here it will be, you zoom in and out, it will always be there. Yeah. You can also view Sentinel-2 imagery. So again, you zoom in over an area, and here Sentinel-2 imagery, and I said set OPSI satellite. What this is now doing, it's calculating how many imagery are available in July over this area, and it's calculating the cloud cover, because sometimes these satellites are contaminated by clouds, and so you really want to be able to quickly access the most cloud-free image. So here what it's doing, it's looking at the various options, and so we have one image from the 4th of July at 28% cloud cover, another at 63% taken on the 9th of July. Sentinel-2 imagery is acquired every 5 days, yeah, over Indonesia, and another 26%, another 48%, another 27%. Well, I don't know which one we want, but let's try this one, for example, pasang di peta. Yeah. And then so we have an image from the 24th of July, which is 2 days ago. So that's pretty good, yeah. But here that image comes at 10-meter resolution. So it's planet is 5 meter. The ESRI base map, but planet comes every month. The ESRI base map is 50 centimeters, but we don't have access over when it was acquired. And this is 10 meter, but it's every 5 days. So you see roads, you start seeing settlements, but obviously it's 10 meters, so it's not as high detail as you would see in Google, for example. But it's an image from 2 days ago, so that's very interesting. And you can view that image in 2 different colors. So in warna, true color, it means as the eye would see it, it's in 10 meters, but you could decide to view it in false color. And in false color, set OPSI, so it's going to recalculate, but it's going to show the imagery in infrared colors, and the resolution is 20 meters, so it's slightly lower. It's not 10 meters in infrared, it's 20 meters. Infrared is really good if you want to look at burn scar. Because burn scar, they show the contrast of burn scars is very good with infrared imagery. So for example, I will open up the same image of the 27th of the 24th, of the same images here, but in false color. So that's what it looks like. It's voila, but that's false color images. So you see all of these really dark red areas are very small burn scars, and perhaps even this one. Yeah. Then you could also view, and for Sentinel-2 imagery, you can go as far back as 2019 for Sentinel-2. I think, yeah, I mean, you have to try. I don't know if it will work in 2017 because the satellite was launched in 2017, I think, or maybe earlier than that, but it was not fully operational over Indonesia until a few years later. You can also view Landsat Imagery. Maybe you've heard of Landsat. That's been around for a long time. And again, so in true color or in false color, Landsat is 30-meter resolution. So again, if I go to set OPSI satellite, it's going to measure the cloud cover for the field of view that we're looking at now, and it's going to display the imagery, and then you can then decide which one you want to put on the map. And it takes a little while because so here there's two choices. There's one at 100% cloud cover, so that's on the 13th of July, not great. 21st of July, pasang di peta. So that's the imagery, but you see it's not great. But then you could put it on the right, kanan, or on the left if you want to do a comparison with another image, and so on. You can also look at yeah.
Hey, this image can be embedded in certain location, or we just can screen cap or what to embed in website.
What you can do is that you can go to bagikan peta.
Okay.
And so once you've opened an image, you've looked at over a particular area, and you go to bagikan peta, and what it's going to do, it's going to generate a URL, and you can copy that, and then you can embed this, you know, in any word processor or in WordPress, you know, as a URL. And what it will do is that when you click on it, then it will open the atlas specifically as you had sort of laid it out with the image that you opened over that specific location, and so on.
Okay.
So and then you can look at MODIS imagery, VIIRS imagery, and so on. So there's a big choice of data that you can look at. And then, of course, what you can now do is you can do time-lapse animations. So let's say, for example, let's go over an area. Well, before I do this, maybe I'll go back to maps. Let's use the dashboard, that second module. So we've sort of looked at that. We looked at Indonesia, but we could have also looked at a village. So for example, what's the name of your village? Or were you born in a village at all? Or do you have a village in mind, for example?
Raga Jaya. Raga.
Like this? Raja Jaya, yeah?
Raga Jaya. Yeah, okay. We can.
So now it's going to take us to the village of Raja Jaya. And so you see the same thing. It's going to tell me, okay, 1 hectare was cleared according to that sensor since the 1st of January 2022. Tren tahunan, well, there was no forest loss at all. And then hutan tersisa is 0 hectares. And well, if everything is 0 here, there's not much in terms of. Okay. Of course, it's not 0 there. There's probably some pertanian, but we only do sawit and at the moment and hati, and it looks like this village does not have any of that. But so now we're in this village, and maybe I would like to generate a time lapse, for example. So I zoom over the area, and I go to Membuat time lapse. So this is the one that is at the top here. and I say, okay, maybe I'd like to generate a time lapse from the 26th for like from a whole year, like 12 months of data. And maybe I just want to select the image that I have less than 20%, maybe just, like, let's try 5% cloud cover. Yeah, so to try to generate a nice time lapse without cloud contamination. So I choose Harian. Satu detik is the speed. We have three options. Dua detik, tidak detik. It's the speed of the transition from one frame to another. And I go to what GIF. And there's also the 50%. Let's not worry about that. You can even put a judul here. You could put, say, the name of the village, for example. And we're going to try to improve this by putting insets, by putting a legend, by putting maybe a scale bar. So what it's going to do now, it's going to generate a time lapse using Sentinel-2 over your village over the last year. So it takes a little while. And now you see the image starts to appear. It's just a little bit slow because of my internet. So the first image that it found at 5% cloud cover was done the 31st of July 2021. And then it's going to you see down here, you see that marker here in blue? That's the first frame. And then we're going to have another frame and another and another and another up until July 2022. Okay, so it started. You see, this is the second frame, 9th of September. And so it's kind of loading all these frames. And once it's loaded them all, it will run without effortlessly. And then what you can do here is you can download this and save that as a GIF file once it's downloaded. So it's a little bit slow. So we have this. Normally it's quite quick. Huh? I don't know whether you can try it on your computer now, but then normally it's quite quick. But the internet isn't good here. And this is
what is the maximum time range? Is only 10 years, or we can go only
so
in 10 years?
With Sentinel-2, we usually like I like to use it when I use Sentinel-2 or when I use Planet. I usually don't go over 2 years of data. So time range of maximum 2 years. Okay.
2 years.
But with Landsat, you can go as far back as 1984.
Wow.
But we tried it. Like it worked brilliantly in an area in Brazil, for example, in the state of Rondônia, where we could generate a really nice time lapse going back to 1984. And I tried generating one for like Gunung Loisa, for example, but it was too cloudy because the imagery weren't. But in theory, but that's possible. We can try that. And then what happens is that once you have the GIF file, you download it, then you can use a little like a little piece of software, like a GIF editor, where you can remove frames that you don't want, that might be too gillette, because sometimes the GIF is created. And okay, so now it's done it, you see. So we have a little GIF. I don't know if there were many changes over the area, but for example, you see there's like some sort of maybe road here or something that sort of appeared, you see, in the village. So you can see changes, and you can go and save that as a GIF file. And then with a GIF editor, you can remove unwanted frames. So if we wanted to generate a time lapse over a much longer period of time, you would choose Landsat mixed, because Landsat is actually a mix of satellites that have been launched in space at different times. And Landsat 5 was launched in 1984. Landsat 9 was launched in November 2021, and you have all the ones in the middle. So you would choose Landsat mixed, and you would choose an interval of 1 year. It means that it would select an image each year. And then you could say, let's go to 1985. Let's say 1985, for example. And let's try to 5%. And so here it's going to try to generate a time lapse over what is it, like almost like 40 years almost. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should have not launched. Let's see if it works. But
see.
Or maybe I should. Okay, but you understood, yeah? Maybe you can try that. It might take a while. I don't know, because the internet. So what I'll do is I'll start again. Yeah, so we can continue on. So I've sort of showed you the capabilities of generating time-lapse animations and so on. Yeah, I don't know why is the internet so slow. It's annoying.
Maybe I can try. It is.
That's slow now, the internet. Okay. So we've looked in detail at global search. Use the dashboard. That's really interesting. So this is if you want to gain quick real-time insight into where deforestation and fires might be happening and who might be responsible. So if you go to dashboard, it takes you here. And what it does, so again, it has 2 tabs. One is for deforestation alerts, 2 kinds of sensors, GLAD or RAD, and it has the fire alert tab. Yeah. So here it's basically looking at fire hotspots. So for example, so it's every time it sort of regenerates this. So it's looking at fire hotspots today. So it's loading. So what it's doing is basically going to give the 5 protected areas that have had the most fire hotspot today. There's 5 sub-districts, 5 villages and districts, pulpwood concessions, groups, and so on that have had the most fires today. It's generating a list. Well, actually here it says no data. Maybe because let's look at the last 2 days, for example. All right, last 2 days. So you see, it says that the mill called Natura Pacific Nusantara had 2 hotspots within a 10-kilometer, within its vicinity. We take a 10-kilometer buffer. Pulpwood groups, concession. Let's look at the like sub-districts, for example. Umbu, Ratu, and Ngai had 11 hotspots 2 days ago. Bromo Tengger Semeru's and 6 hotspots. I think that's probably volcanic activity.
Yes. What happens if we click on the view?
It takes you there. So if we go to sub-district, I go to view. So it's going to take us to the district of to the kecamatan of Umbu, Ratu, and Ngai, which is in it's in Sumba.
Sumba, yes.
And it's going to show the 11 hotspots with the details, whether they are in so all of them were in non-forest areas, and so you see all the 11 hotspots here. So let's go back to the deforestation alerts, for example. So here I go to deforestation alerts, but so by default it starts in 1st of January, but you can go back to a year before that by taking that cursor here to there. And so here, for example, it says that there were near the mill of Tapan in Sumatra, there were 681 hectares cleared according to RAD sensor, GLAD sensor. You can also look at GLAD and RAD, see what this says. And look, this one is interesting. So these are the top 5 oil palm concessions that have had the most deforestation in the last 6 or 7 months now. So you see Permata Sawit Mandiri, for example, Inti Kebun Sawit, PT USU, and so on. They've had this much forest. So if you go to Permata Sawit Mandiri, for example, here, by clicking on view, it's going to take you over the concession. And it's now taking us to the alerts. Maybe I go back to this Bahasa Indonesia, so the peringatan, yeah, it's taking us directly there. And so it's stating the 466 hectares, but that's tree loss. And in the dashboard, it's only reporting forest loss. So it's reporting, yeah, you see kehilangan hutan di tanah mineral 424. And so it's showing where that is happening. So this is the area on the pink. Yeah, this is, you can also scroll to maybe just the 4th of April or just last month. Yeah. Or you can take down to the 1st of January 2021. So it's updating the number here. And it's also updating the chart. And you can see that most of the deforestation happened in this year. And this is where, for example, you can use the satellite data for, you can either, if you look at the satellite data here, if you access the satellite data from here and not from here, it will keep the pink area over the satellite. So for example, if I add this image on the right from Planet in May, when the image appears, it will still show the area highlighted in pink. Yeah. But if you don't, so sometimes you want to show the entire image, you don't want to see the area in pink, so you can make that disappear by doing this. Yeah. But if you just want to look at the image without this under, you go to here and it will do the same thing, but without that. So again, we can, maybe that's interesting to generate a time lapse of the area. So we know, for example, so first, what are we sure that this is forest? Well, according to 5-meter data, according to it's forest. According to the 5-meter data, it looks like it's forest, but maybe that's when the ESRI base map is interesting. So maybe we can put it, let's put it on the right, on the left first. And so you see that if we zoom in, let's see if it's forest. It should, the level of details should appear. It's a little bit slow, but you see, okay, we are over forest here, very clear. And let's look at the Planet imagery from May. Let's put it on the right. So that's the ESRI base map here. On the ESRI base map is on the left and on the right. So you see there was clearing going on, and you can, it's very clear that forest
deforestation
was cleared. And then you might want to generate a GIF. So, you know, you might want to generate a GIF. So if we go back to the peringatan, you see all that deforestation, and maybe you might want to generate a GIF. So we go to satellite, and then what, time lapse? You can generate the time lapse with Sentinel 2 is very good, but you can try to generate with Planet. So let's take again 1 year of data. With Planet, you don't really care the 20% because it's already pre-processed. The clouds were removed, and so it's going to generate a time lapse, and it will show how deforestation has progressed in the landscape. You can save that as a GIF. You can send that to or embed that in a news article to show the evidence, basically.
Okay.
So what the dashboard does is really helping people to identify quickly who's been clearing just right now. So this is the first image. So it's going to, again, it's going to take a bit of time. It shouldn't, but it will then show the deforestation sort of progressing over the last year in that particular concession. You see there was another block here, and so on. And then when you are happy with the, with where you are, you can go to Bagikan Peta, and you can copy the link, and then you can send it to somebody, or you can embed it in an article. And when people click on it, they will it will open directly over that concession, and it will show that this time-lapse animation. So it's loading, maybe one or two more, just to show you the final result of this. Is a real case of deforestation happening that shouldn't be happening. It's orangutan habitat. Okay, so here we are. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the dashboard here is really to help you sort of understand who's been clearing and why. So we give the Konsesi Kelapa Sawit, we give the Pabrik Kelapa Sawit, so see what's happening around. Also the Kayu Pulp, so we have the Konsesi Kayu Pulp and group. The difference between group Kelapa Sawit and Konsesi Kelapa Sawit is that the group is more, if you click on a group like Chili Andri Ankeabadi, for example, or Salim, it might give you 2 or 3 different concessions at once. Yeah, because it's a group, so a group owns different concessions. But if you want to look at specifically one, or what's going on in individual concessions, that's where you want to look at it. Look here, and you can expand. Of course, here it shows by default the top 5, but you can view all. Yeah, so you can view the entire list.
Yes.
Okay, so then what you can do is you can analyze land cover changes. You can do the same analysis, but you can do it by choosing a land use theme. What I mean by this is that if you click here, by default, it's going to choose the concessions themes. Yeah. So here, if you go to concessions, you have 3 options. You can look at Kelapa Sawit, you can look at Kayu Pulp, you can look at Penambangan or Konsesi lainnya. Yeah, there's more than 3 cases. Yeah. So for example, if I choose Kayu Pulp, I'm going to go, if I click on Analyza, it's going to by default put in the concessions of Kayu Pulp. So for example, if I go to an area that I know is has a lot of let's say, for example, this area here, for example, or this area here, for example. So right here, it's showing the concessions. Here, the white lines are concessions of Kelapa Sawit. But if I go to Analyza Kayu Pulp, it's going to, you see, the white lines are disappearing. The new ones are appearing here. It's like this one here. You see?
Yeah.
This one here is, and if you click on it, because you can also click on individual concessions by mouse click. It's it's Muara Sungai Landak. Yeah. It's a particular, it's this concession, and it already has this is planted here, and all of that is peat swamp forest. So again, so if you go back to analyze land cover changes, you can analyze in concessions. You can Dekat Pabrik. So if I go to analyze Dekat Pabrik, the locations of the palm oil mills, you see the orange ones is going to show up. So there's about here, it's actually a global data, so it's not just looking at Indonesia, it's looking at the whole world. So you'll see them appearing in Malaysia as well. So these are all of the locations of the the palm oil mills. You can look at kawasan konservasi, for example. You can look at what's going on inside the protected areas. So if you go to Analisa here you're going to have the protected areas, the Taman Nasional, the Cagar Alam, or the Suaka Marga Satwa are going to appear. And what you can do here, you see you have like pencarian yang lain. This is global search. This is local search.
Okay.
So here you can hanya bisa cari kawasan konservasi. So for example, if you type Loiser, Gunung Loiser, so it's going to take you to Taman Nasional Gunung Loiser in Aceh and Sumatra Utara. The way we organize this is that when a protected area straddles 2 kabupatens, we break that down. So here we have 17 units. So you see when we did this search, we have this thing that is appearing. That's because it's broken down into 17 units. You know, it's tells you Gunung Loser di Aceh Tenggara, di Gayo Lues, di Langkat. All of these are the names of the kabupatens. Yeah. And you can analyze data in what we call wilayah adat. We have like, for example, you can look at what's happening in hutan desa, hutan or hutan adat, for example. So these are, so now you have these various okay, there's adat di sini, for example. This is hutan adat. Yeah. So for example, if I click here, it's Nama Tombak. I mean, you know, that's the name of it. Yeah. You can also look in batas administratif. So for example, you could look by negara, 3 negara, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei untuk sementara. You can look at provinsi, 41 provinsi. You can look at kabupaten, kecamatan, down to the tingkat desa, so 83,169 villages. So for example, if I go to kecamatan, there are 7,262 of them. I go to Analisa. So here what it's going to do, it's going to put the batas-batas kecamatan. So here you can choose one here, but you can also choose if you have in a global search. But what the local search is very interesting at is you can do like more like targeted searches. So for example, you cari lebih detail. You can say, okay, I'm gonna look at all the kecamatan's, for example, inside I mean, I don't know, the province of Kalimantan Tengah, for example. Yeah. So here, and you can also, okay, this is semua kabupaten, semua kecamatan, okay, and go search. So here, what it's going to do, it's going to highlight all the kecamatans in Kalimantan Tengah only.
Okay. So
and then, sorry, I'll just finish because that's and then what you can do is you can use this tab here. You see, it's found 136 sub-districts, and you can do some rankings there. So if you click here, so you have by default the districts are reorganized by from the largest to the smallest, but then you can tell it, okay, I want to know which one has the most forest left in 2021. So Seribu Riam with 860,000 hectares. Or I want to know which one has the most planted area of both oil palm and pulp and paper. This one, Telawang, 68,000 hectares. I want to know which one had the most forest loss, maybe in 2001, or maybe in 2005, or maybe the total. Here, I take the total. So Mantagai had the most forest loss and you go to lihat, and it's taking you to that kecamatan.
Okay.
And so basically it had the most forest loss in the last 20 years. And if you want to show that forest loss, maybe you go to layer here, because you go back to layer, but that's not going to go away. Your search still there. And you go to tambah layer, for example, and you say, show me the kehilangan hutan 2001 to 2021. And so you see here, it's putting with the blue is the first year and red is the last year. So it's showing where deforestation happened. So for example, here in orange, we know that this was forest that is marked here as 2016, but actually occurred in October 2015, and which participates in this peak of deforestation that we saw for Indonesia. Yeah. So and then what you can do is, okay, show me which one had the most deforestation in the last 6 months according to the radar data, the radar alerts RAD, and go to total or forest loss. So it's Seruyan Hulu at 823 hectares. So now it's taking you to Seruyan Hulu. So it's had the most forest loss according to the GLAD alerts of all of the kecamatan in Kalimantan Tengah. Yeah. And that's okay. This one here is not the forest loss in the last 6 months. This one stops in December 2021. So if you want to see that forest loss, so let's let's make it like this. But you go to Peringatan, and you can see. So that was RAD. So let's go to RAD. So you see, sometimes RAD is higher, sometimes it's lower. Yeah, so it depends on the context. So here it says 854 hectares, and it looks like it was probably logging or
Ping area.
Voilà. So you can do this also with the GLAD and so on. So that's quite good to do that. So batas administratif sampai tingkat desa, ya. So sampai tingkat desa. So here I click desa, and so sekarang I have all the 83,000 municipalities on the system, and you can do the same pencarian.
Okay.
Untuk jalan, that's quite interesting. This is what we do is that we look at deforestation in a 1 kilometer buffer along the roads, the main roads, basically the roads that we report as red and black here in the system. So we may have missed some, but what we did is that we created road segments by linking ibu kota kabupaten ke ibu kota kabupaten. So for example, when you say here cari nama jalan, so here it's like Aimas to Klamano. So it means that dari kota Aimas ke kota Klamano. I don't know where that is, but maybe if you click on it, it's gonna take it's somewhere in Papua Barat. You see, this is this road segment. But what's interesting is that what you can do with this is that you can go to Cari, and you can instead of Cari lebih detail, you can go to semua roads, for example. Yeah, so ini semua yang berada di Indonesia, dan juga ini Malaysia. And so after, you can see which road segment had the most deforestation, for example, in the last 6 months, or so it's found these number of road segments, and you can say, okay, which one had, according to RAD, had the most forest loss. So this in Kaimana with 183 hectares, Muri to Sima. Yeah.
Papua, yeah.
So it could be interesting if you're looking at the impacts of roads, for example. Yeah. So Kuri to and then there's this other theme called pemanfaatan lahan, where you can do analysis of perubahan tutupan lahan terhadap nasional, kawasan hutan, Provinsi Papua, and inside the moratorium. So for example, here we have a moratorium map. that will show up, or we have the kawasan hutan that will show up, and then you can do some analyses of like if you click on one, for example, you click on this one, it's a hutan produksi konversi in Teluk Wandana, and you have all the same information, all of the same information, statistics will appear. What I forgot to do is that to tell you is that in the dashboard, here by default it says semua region negara provinsi, but you say you're only interested in for example what's happening in in Borneo or in Papua or in Sulawesi. You can look at regional, but you can look at negara, just look at Indonesia, or just look at what's happening in per province. So here, for example, let's say I just want to know what's happened in the province of Aceh, for example. So here, what it's doing, it's like it's rerunning the urutan in the dashboard, but only looking at Aceh. So for example, here it says that this group, Jardin Mateson, had the most deforestation at 91 hectares. It's not much. Here, the top is unknown. It means we don't know who owns the concession. But you see, for example, Konsesi Kelapa Sawit, Berna Coklat Court, 39 hectares. But that's khusus untuk Aceh, yeah. So that's if you want to do targeted. So you know, if you go to Lihat, for example, it will take you to that specific concession. So that's about it. But one more thing, which probably would be interesting, is that okay, well, there's actually these things down at the bottom. Okay, this map of Resiko is only for Papua. We created a map of deforestation risk into the future. So but it's only for Papua. We did not do it for the whole of Indonesia. So here, this is the areas that are marked. So I will put, so this is a probability of kehilangan hutan, you see. So this is how much forest remains today in Papua. But the ones that are marked in green are the ones that we think don't have a lot of risk to be deforested. The ones that are marked in red, those are the ones that we think have high risk of deforestation. So the probability of deforestation is close to 1. So you can play with the probability. So here's 0. So here you see it's going away because it's, and here, see, for example, I'm just keeping the ones that have like a high probability of deforestation from 0.676 to 1. So you can play with that, but that's only up until now, for Papua. And we actually have a paper attached to that we published last year. There's also a 5-decade overview. So like looking at what's been happening in deforestation since 1973. So it's only for Papua and for Kalimantan. We had published a paper in 2014 where we had mapped for the first time the deforestation so here in white, this is Konsesi Kelapa Sawit, because we are in theme Konsesi, yeah. So this was, you see the maybe if I change theme, for example, if I put batas administrasi and I put like negara, for example, we can see that better. Yeah, so we and I go back to oh yeah, because that goes away. So to have these things appear down at the bottom, we need to have a land unit active. Yeah, it could be a concession, it could be an administrative boundary. So if I go to 5-decade overview, you see there's quite a lot of difference of deforestation. That's 5 decades, yeah. And then you know, it gives also perubahan 5 dekade, for example, yeah. This could be interesting stories. What we try to do is we try to geotag stories. So here we geotagged the story that we wrote. We geotagged it to the whole of Indonesia. So that's the article, and But if we go to, for example, to like concessions, like if you go to oil palm concessions, you see the stories, like there's like a push pin. This is where there's a story. So here's, for example, we have a number of push pins.
You can click on
So
it.
that's where we have stories. So so you see we have an article in Mongabay News that talks specifically about this concession. And so this is what we want to do in the future. We want to enrich the atlas with by linking stories, either the ones that we write ourselves in the blog or the ones that other journalists, other newspapers have written, like Mongabay News, or maybe even yourselves. If you're going to write a story about a specific area, we'll say, okay, we'll geotag that story because to a specific concession or a kecamatan and so on. So we have a number of concessions. So, for example, here this is a story that was written a while ago over this why is it? Maybe there's a problem here. It's not showing it. There's a story on Permata Nusa Mandiri. But there's also other kinds of stories that we've geotagged. So that would be interesting. Or if you had like a story that you wanted us to geotag, for example, we could do that. Yeah, because the geotagging of stories, this is something that we have control of, because we don't want to have stories that don't make sense. So we choose them. And we also have a possibility to geotag photos. So if you click on geotag of down here, so we have quite a few photos down here. So georeference photographs of the area. So if you click on here, you will have a photo of over the area.
Okay.
And again, we'd like to enrich the atlas by adding more photos. Yeah. So I guess that's about it. I wanted to maybe show you. There was one photo, for example, one story that Mongabay News wrote recently, and it was on fires, peat-swamp fires in the district of Pesisir Selatan in Sumatra Barat. So there's here a link. It's this district here, and you see there's a push pin that says that there was a story. So if I click on the story, you see where there were these massive fires down here, down at the bottom. We detected them using the atlas. So the way we were able to do this, we went to Peringatan, and we had the dashboard, and we could see that in March there was unusual fire activity. So if I go to the historical data, for example, of fire activity in Pesisir Selatan, let's say going back to the 1st of January, for example, then if you look at the profile, which is going to update, you can see that there was a first peak around February, but there was a big, fire event from like 20 March to about 20 April, and the fires were all here, and it's taking time, but the fires the hotspot should be loading. And so there was a story written by Mongabay News, where they reported the incident because it went unnoticed, this incident, but it burned. You see, this is down here where we actually mapped the burned area extent. It was about 6,000 hectares of peatlands. Most of this was not forest anymore. It was like, lahan terlantar, like semak, belukar, pakis, and so on. But this was peatlands, and this is a moratorium. This is inside the moratorium, so it's problematic. Yeah. So these are the kinds of things that we could do. And I also saw an article that was published by that I sent to I saw that today. That was published by this journalist. So this is the journalist that I mentioned at the start of the conversation.
Yes, it's Dina.
Yeah, so she wrote an article, and she used data from the Nusantara. So she did the screenshots using the Lois ecosystem, but also what she did is that she so that's from Haka, from the LSM Haka. But so she the data dari Nusantara Atlas. So she created a link where you can zoom in over, I think, this desa called, there's a particular desa that she's talking about, Chot Direk. And but then she also posted this time lapse, you see, that we over that particular village. So that's an example where the data can be used for like a news article.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I already read this article.
Okay. So I think I may have talked too much, and I may have not explained well, but our hope is that the way the atlas is structured, then you can more or less easily learn how to use this by sort of, we've split what the atlas can do into these 4 major themes. Use global search, use the dashboard. Global search will take you here. Dashboard will take you here. Analyze land cover changes will take you by default to concessions, but you can use fabric, kawasan hutan, and all the way down to here. These are the themes. And generate time lapse is also something that you can do with the images, and you can also do comparison between 2 images acquired at 2 different dates, and so on. But if you have other questions, of course, we'll definitely we can assist you to I think as you will learn how to use it, you probably will have questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I think this is a good tools for journalists. I think it's very helpful and very useful for journalists is if we want to make a story about the deforestation or another story about the forest. Thank you very much for the time. We running out the time. Thank you for your sharing today, David. I think we will spread the link on YouTube, and maybe we can share it to the journalists, and they can use the Nusantara Atlas to start making reporting about the deforestation in Indonesia. I hope
that would be great. This is that's the raison d'être of the atlas. It's a free resource. Nobody, you don't have to pay for it. It's a free resource. It's for NGOs. It's for journalists. It's for government. I know that some people from the local government, from the Dinas Kehutanan in various provinces, are using the system. It's not a system that I understand sensitivities about number of hectares deforested, burned, and so on. It's so it might not provide the official data, and if we report a number of deforestation or number of hotspots, you have to be a little bit cautious about it. And it's not meant to replace the official data set. It's more meant to sort of identify where there's a problem. And then, if you need to know better the extent, then more detailed analysis will need to be done.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. once again, thank you very much. Maybe this is the end. I hope we can have more discuss next time, maybe with
Yes.
a lot of journalists to join this discussion. Thank
Great.
you very much, David. Maybe it's the end.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Should I call you Mawa or Krishna?
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you, Krishna. So it's been a pleasure, and I'll, we're available for further discussions if necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. See you next time.